In the heart of a magical realm lies the United Kingdom of Euchronia, a land where magic flows through the very air, powered by a mysterious force known as Magla. This kingdom, formed by 3 nations, is home to 8 unique races, each with their own extraordinary traits. Some have extra limbs, others sport beast-like ears, and all carry their own stories, struggles, and ambitions. At the core of this society is Sanctism, the state religion, a faith that many believe is the foundation of the kingdom's prosperity. But no kingdom is without turmoil. In the year 785 of Euchronia's history, the realm was shaken to its core. King Hythlodaeus V, a monarch beloved and feared, was assassinated. The perpetrator? None other than Louis, a powerful military leader whose ambitions knew no bounds. The court, rife with whispers, was quick to label the assassination an open secret. The kingdom, once bound by fragile peace, descended into chaos. Tensions flared as races turned against each other, and the deep divides in society became impossible to ignore. To make matters worse, the king's only son, the prince, had been presumed dead for years, leaving the throne without a clear successor. The nation teetered on the brink of collapse, and so the story begins. It begins with a question. A voice from the void breaks the fourth wall, asking the player,
if fantasy is born from hope, a desire to make the world better than it is, then that hope can be made manifest. Thus does change come, and thus is fantasy forged into a new reality. Perhaps the story about to unfold before you will tell us. I'm thoroughly invested now myself, so let this tale begin.
With that provocative thought, the tale unfolds, sweeping us into the life of our protagonist. Will, a young man with striking blue hair, is traveling toward the royal capital. Beside him sits Gallica, a companion from the Elda tribe, a group despised and marginalized by society. Will himself is an Elda, and the weight of his people's struggles hangs heavy on his shoulders. Their journey takes an ominous turn when bandits ambush their carriage. Though they hand over most of their belongings, Will refuses to part with a small, treasured book, a decision that sparks a violent clash. As tensions rise, a fiery-haired woman steps in, standing boldly against the bandits. Chaos erupts, and in the fray, Will is kicked off a nearby cliff. But fate is kind. This time, Will lands on soft sand, unscathed. He and Gallica navigate treacherous terrain, avoiding lurking monsters, and finally reach their destination, the royal capital, Grand Trad. Grand Trad is a city of stark contrasts. Its opulent towers and bustling markets speak of wealth and prosperity. Yet in the shadows, the lower classes, especially the outcast races, struggle to survive. Here, luxury and despair exist side by side, separated by the thinnest of lines. But the capital holds more secrets than just its beauty and brutality. Contrary to popular belief, the prince isn't truly dead. Years ago, he was attacked and cursed with a dark art so potent that it left him in a coma. His loyal supporters secretly smuggled him out of the palace, hiding him from enemies like Louis. Among these loyalists is Will, the prince's childhood friend, who now carries a mission of grave importance: to deliver a secret order to allies hidden within the military. To accomplish this, Will decides to enlist in the army, but the path ahead is anything but easy. At the recruitment center, Will faces immediate prejudice. A burly officer mocks him for his heritage, and the other recruits don't bother hiding their disdain. Yet Will perseveres, managing to secure his place in the ranks. Later, a young nobleman in yellow clothes steps forward to defend him during a tense confrontation, offering a glimpse of unexpected camaraderie. The new recruits' first mission takes them north to a distant border fort. Coincidentally, it's also the hiding place of Will's secret allies. That night, as Will lies awake, troubled by the day's events, Gallica suggests he turn to the book he's carried all this way, a gift from the prince. This book, simply titled Fantasy Novel, tells the story of a place unlike any other. It describes a world known as the fantasy world, where only one race exists, and harmony reigns. There, magic is unnecessary. Instead, people rely on ingenuity and knowledge to create vast cities and fulfilling lives. The world is built on equality, untouched by the divisions and prejudices that plague Euchronia. Yet as Will reads, he notices something unsettling. The illustrations and descriptions in the book resemble aspects of his own world. Could this fantasy world hold the key to understanding Euchronia's fate? With these questions lingering in his mind, Will's journey takes a turn toward destiny, one filled with danger, revelation, and the hope of a brighter future. The next day, the new recruits arrived at the fortress, traveling in a carriage that rumbled through the land. Will found himself face to face with a familiar face, the young nobleman, Stroll. They had barely exchanged names when an unexpected sight stopped them in their tracks. A soldier, bloodied and barely alive, staggered towards them, a lot, speaking of a violent conflict on the northern border. It was a call to action. The military commander ordered Will and Stroll to investigate immediately. They made their way into the fortress, where chaos reigned. A monstrous creature was tearing through the soldiers with relentless fury. The terrifying part? It was described as human. What could this possibly mean? They rushed to the top of the fortress tower, only to find the aftermath of devastation. Every soldier in sight was dead. Will and Stroll drew their swords, but the creature was too powerful, too ferocious. Stroll, ever the noble warrior, urged Will to flee while he held the creature at bay. But Stroll was no match for the monster, and he was quickly overpowered. Then, in the midst of the madness, a voice, soft but powerful, whispered in Will's mind. It wasn't a voice he could ignore. Guided by its mysterious call, Will reached for his heart.
Oh, fate-saddled child. Oh, anguished traveler. Thy fate is crown-twined, thy soul bound for the throne. The future yet unknown dawns in this moment. Thy path may fork, but only one may be chosen. Confront the threat before thee, or die here in obscurity. Now choose.
I choose.
So be it. Heroism lies in the soul that stands firm against its fears. Power awaits thy command. The time is come to awaken the hero within. Engrave thy very heart.
In that very instant, something changed. His power, dormant until now, surged to life. He took a stance, one known as archetype. It wasn't just a form. This was a transformation, a powerful awakening, like a persona coming to life before his eyes. The creature, once invincible, crumpled under Will's newfound strength. The voice explained this power as the manifestation of Will's deepest desires, a tool to face the fear that had been buried within him all this time. And as if to confirm his newfound strength, a survivor appeared, a one-eyed, elderly soldier. Calica instantly recognized him, Grius. He was the ally they had been seeking. With Stroll unconscious, Calica relayed their mission, to kill Louis, the man responsible for the king's assassination. Using a magical device, the Farsight Mirror, Grius saw the prince's condition. Cursed thorns twisted around him, slowly draining his life. The curse could only be broken by killing its caster, and the answer was clear: Louis. The situation was dire. The prince had been poisoned by Louis's magic, and the time to act was running out. 15 years ago, a young Louis had enlisted as a soldier. His exceptional talent in both magic and combat had earned him quick recognition, and soon he was a military prodigy. But when the king was attacked, Louis had cast a deadly curse on the prince. With no hard evidence, he had evaded conviction, and even now, to many soldiers, he remained a hero. But if Louis ascended to the throne, the kingdom would fall. Just then, Stroll, who had regained consciousness, overheard the conversation. Driven by his unshakable sense of justice, he pledged to join Will in his mission. Grius's plan was simple: strike during the national funeral. They had to return to the royal capital immediately. That night, after Will fell asleep, something strange happened. He awoke in a mysterious room. A long-haired man stood before him. His name was Moore. The author of the fantasy novel Will had carried with him all this time. This was Moore's study, called Academia, though it was more like a prison, for he had been held captive by the previous king. Moore, with no memory of the place, explained that Will's consciousness had somehow fused with his magic, allowing him to enter this strange world freely. Moore shared the truth about Will's newfound power. Archetype was a transformation triggered by the magic within him, known as Magla. It was real magic, magic that didn't require igniters. Moore believed that with this power, Will could restore his ideals to the kingdom. And so, Moore offered his help. The next day, disguised in civilian clothes, Will and his companions took a secret path through an abandoned mine to return to the capital. But their escape was cut short. Soldiers from the fort pursued them, forcing the group deeper into the mine, where they encountered the military commander himself. The truth hit them like a hammer. The commander had orchestrated everything. His plan was to send inexperienced recruits to die, tarnishing the military's reputation, all to rally the people to Louis's side. But the conspiracy ran deeper than they realized. 7 years ago, when humans had destroyed the village of Halia, the commander had turned a blind eye. Stroll, the lone survivor, had lost his father in the attack. Overcome by rage, Stroll had awakened his own archetype powers.
You're a disgrace to your title. I may not make it out alive, but as for you, you're hopeless!
O thou who art seared with bitterness, O thou anguished traveler, it is time for thou to choose thy path. O lodestar, whose light reveals the king's own path, awaken.
What?
What the? Oh, no! I can't fail Lord Louis. Without him, I've got nothing left. You struggle in vain. I won't let you rob me of my glory! This is the way of the real world, little lordling!
You call this real? Leaders abandon their people and the innocent die by their scorn. If that's the real world, then it can die alongside you! My name is Leon Stroll de Halietus. My home and my family were taken from me. I am the last of my house. I am the last of my noble bloodline. And in the name of my people, I will strike you down where you stand! I will show you a world with honor!
And in a fierce battle, he defeated the commander, though the villain escaped. They pressed on, but the path grew more treacherous. In the depths of the mine, they faced the most fearsome creature of all, a dragon. Their initial plan was to sneak past it, but the players of the game could choose a different path. Some would fight the dragon, earning a powerful weapon for later battles. Regardless of the path chosen, they made it through the mine safely. As night settled and the group camped, Grius shared the story of the prince's assassination attempt. Years ago, masked intruders had breached the palace. Grius and a young red-haired guard had fought fiercely to protect the prince, but the cursed thorns had struck. The red-haired guard had wounded the necromancer, but the villain escaped using teleportation magic. The curse had slowly killed the prince, and no magic doctor could help him. The only way to save him was to kill the one who cast the curse. All signs pointed to Louis. The evidence was clear. Louis had cursed the prince, and he had orchestrated the king's death. The group knew what had to be done. Louis had to be stopped, no matter the cost. They arrived in the capital just in time for the king's funeral. They sought refuge in a cozy tavern known as the Hushed Honeybee Inn, owned by Fabienne, an old acquaintance of Grius. Fabienne also cared for Grius's daughter, Maria. The group took a moment to rest, knowing the greatest challenge of all lay ahead. The next day, the king's funeral unfolded before the Grand Cathedral, a solemn yet monumental event. The kingdom's most influential figures gathered under the solemn toll of bells, their faces heavy with the weight of this historic moment. Hidden among the crowd, Will and Stroll blended in, their eyes fixed on the unfolding drama. Then came Louis. His entrance was nothing short of a spectacle, designed to command attention and assert dominance. With chilling nonchalance, he cast a human skeleton onto the plaza, its bones clattering in an eerie echo. Louis's voice boomed across the square, proclaiming that only the strong could protect the kingdom. With no trace of humility, he declared himself the rightful king. Before the murmurs of the crowd could turn into cheers or jeers, the sky blazed with an otherworldly flash.
Such power. It can't be. The palace!
Could this be the king's own magic?
I am Hypnodius the Fifth.
His Majesty?
The people of my land desire a new king, and I shall provide.
Gasps erupted as a colossal stone face materialized above the cathedral, its expression stern and regal. The deep, resonant voice of the late King Hypnodius Firth echoed through the plaza. The royal magic had been triggered. The apparition explained that his soul would linger in the mortal realm for 4 months. During that time, the throne would belong to the individual who earned the trust of the people, a test of worthiness, not strength. As the king's words faded, the giant face displayed a magical tally of votes. Leading the polls was Forden, the revered Grand Priest of Sanctism, his name shining at the top. But Louis was not far behind, his numbers climbing steadily. The square grew electric as Forden and Louis seized the moment, calling on the crowd to pledge their allegiance. Amid the fervor, a figure broke through the throng. Grius, disguised as a soldier, charged at Louis with a blade in hand. His loyalty to the royal family burned fiercely in his eyes. But as his blade neared its target, radiant chains descended from the heavens, binding him in an instant. The royal magic had anticipated such violence and enacted its safeguard. No high-ranking candidate could be harmed by another's hand. Any attempt would end in immobilization. The cruel irony was undeniable. Grius's unwavering devotion had led him to this grim fate. Louis wasted no time. With the public as his witness, he executed Grius, slashing his throat with merciless precision. The crowd fell silent, the reality of Louis's ruthlessness sinking in. With the facade stripped away, Louis revealed his true self. His ironclad fleet hovered above, gauntlet runners unleashing devastating cannon fire upon the cathedral. As the explosions shook the earth, chaos erupted. Amid the bedlam, a man with violet hair appeared, declaring himself a follower of Louis. His audacity knew no bounds. He desecrated the king's coffin and summoned an army of skeletal warriors to block all paths forward. As the undead swarmed, the violet-haired man retreated into the cathedral. Will and his companions battled their way through the skeletal horde, their swords cutting through the shambling masses. Just as the last of the undead crumbled, a familiar figure joined their ranks, the red-haired knight from the carriage. Introducing himself as Hulkenberg, he quickly revealed the enemy's true goal, the royal scepter, an artifact of immense power housed within the cathedral. Together, the group stormed the desecrated cathedral, now a battlefield overrun with undead. Along the way, Hulkenberg shared a painful truth. He had once been the prince's bodyguard, the very red-haired knight who had fought valiantly during the attack years ago. Grius's identity, too, was revealed. His true name was Alcis, the prince's former swordsmanship mentor. The relentless cannon fire had reduced parts of the cathedral to rubble, forcing the group to find another way forward. Their path led them into the cathedral's underground mausoleum, a labyrinth of ancient tombs and eerie silence. But the moment they stepped inside, the trap was sprung. The violet-haired necromancer had been waiting. From the shadows emerged a grim figure, the reanimated corpse of Grius. Twisted by the necromancer's dark magic, the once proud soldier now moved with inhuman ferocity. Hulkenberg froze, his heart breaking at the sight of his former comrade reduced to this grotesque state. The group fought valiantly but was quickly overwhelmed. As despair closed in, Hulkenberg dropped his weapon, ready to surrender to the overwhelming grief. But Will's voice rang out, cutting through the darkness.
The prince is alive!
The conviction in his tone unshakable. Those words ignited a spark within Hulkenberg, a glimmer of hope. In that moment, Hulkenberg's own archetype awakened.
Who wanders in solemn duty, O thou anguished traveler. Thy long stagnant stance hath finally been broken. Now choose thy path.
Now my new calling, transcending all oaths, I choose life of my own will!
Thank you. Thou hast chosen a noble parting. Henceforth, thy fears and insecurities become thy light. Thou art the brilliant star that shall illuminate the King's Road. Now, awaken.
My name is Iselin Pacelli Majal Hulkenberg. I am knight, I am commander, and last of the honor guards! Once more, I take up arms in my liege's name!
Alcest, I will see you freed.
With newfound strength and resolve, he struck down the undead Grius. As the cursed soldier fell, his last words came as a remorseful whisper, a tragic farewell to his old comrades. Exhausted and battered, the group retreated to the hushed Honeybee Inn to recover, but their respite was bittersweet. Grius's daughter, Maria, was inconsolable. Overcome with grief, she locked herself away, unwilling to face the world. It would fall to Will's unwavering compassion to mend her broken spirit in the days to come. Now the game transitions into a period of free exploration, giving players 10 in-game days to thwart Zorba's schemes. During this phase, Will and his companions regroup and prepare, eventually making their way back into the treacherous maze of the mausoleum. After enduring relentless battles, they reach the church's rooftop, where Zorba, the necromancer, holds the royal scepter aloft. However, his moment of triumph is cut short as the giant visage of Hythlodaeus Fuft intervenes. The royal magic confiscates the scepter, preventing it from being wielded against Louis, but inadvertently clearing the path for Louis's greater ambitions. Defeated but unwavering in his loyalty to Louis, Zorba uses the last of his strength to cast a catastrophic spell before plunging to his death. This spell revives the human corpse Louis had brought earlier, twisting it into a monstrous abomination that wreaks havoc in the city below. Will and his group race to the surface to confront the creature. After an intense battle that pushes them to their limits, they manage to subdue the monster. Yet the deeper layers of Louis's schemes remain a mystery. Frustrated but determined, the team agrees to split up, gathering intelligence and refining their skills to prepare for the challenges ahead. Meanwhile, within the Senate, the kingdom's elite debate their next steps. The discussion is led by Fordin, the Grand Priest of Sanctism, and includes revelations from the saintly healer Rella. She explains that while the royal magic prevents assassinations of candidates with high public trust, it allows formal, sanctioned duels. Fordin seizes on this loophole, formulating a strategy to counter Louis's growing influence. A few days later, the Sanctism makes a formal proclamation. The airborne visage of Hythlodaeus Fifth represents the late king's will. The declaration opens the throne to any contender who can garner the kingdom's trust by the appointed deadline. To facilitate this process, the Sanctism announces the tournament for the throne, a kingdom-wide series of challenges spanning the capitals of the 3 United Nations within the United Kingdom of Euchronia. The tournament's first event, the Exhibition of the Brave, will take place in the Principality of Oceania, specifically in Port Brilhaven, a bustling maritime city. Contestants must hunt dangerous beasts plaguing the land and present the largest trophy to the city. The challenge is set, and the race for the crown begins. For Will, unable to challenge Louis directly, this tournament offers a critical opportunity. Among Greece's possessions, the group discovers clues indicating Louis possesses the schematic of the dark art used to curse the prince. Acquiring it may be the key to lifting the curse, but the only way to access it is by gaining proximity to Louis himself. Determined to seize the chance, Will announces his decision to enter the tournament for the throne. By participating, he hopes to gain enough prominence to attract Louis' attention, paving the way to retrieve the schematic. Thus, the tournament becomes the main focus of the journey. Alongside Stroll, Will heads to the recruitment center to register and search for missions that align with the Exhibition of the Brave. However, most monster hunting tasks have already been claimed, leaving only one available option: a bounty to capture Haisme, a notorious kidnapper terrorizing the southern town of Martyra. At Stroll's suggestion, Will accepts the mission. Nardon explains that Haisme has abducted numerous residents, including children, spreading terror throughout the community. However, Haisme's lair lies deep within a dangerous region teeming with colossal sandworms, rendering the local guards powerless to intervene. Nardon implores Will and his companions to take up this perilous task, setting the stage for their next challenge. During the opening ceremony of the Tournament for the Throne, the kingdom's renowned songstress, Juna, took the stage and delivered a passionate performance that reverberated across the entire square, filling the air with a sense of solemnity and grandeur. The crowd stood in awe as her voice echoed, setting the tone for the fierce competition ahead. Once her performance concluded, the announcers stepped forward, outlining the rules of the tournament and introducing the participants. Among the names mentioned were notable figures such as Archbishop Forden, Captain Jidot of the Monk Army, Glodel, a formidable warrior under Louis's command, and a colorful array of other eccentric contestants. However, when the announcer called out Will's name, the atmosphere shifted. The crowd, initially expectant, cast disdainful glances his way, making the moment awkward. Yet, the announcement rang clear and the competition officially began. The participants climbed into their respective gauntlet runners, preparing to embark on their journeys. As the gauntlet runner finally arrived for Will's party, there was a sense of anticipation. The vehicle, arranged through Hulkenberg's personal connections, was nothing short of impressive. The driver, Nurus, was a royal gauntlet runner technician, and what caught everyone by surprise was the revelation that this very gauntlet runner had been specially constructed for the prince. It was no ordinary vehicle. It was a mobile base, fully equipped with everything they could need: books, fishing gear, and even a kitchen. On the road, Will and his companions encountered a dramatic scene. Two gauntlet runners locked in fierce combat. The combatants were Jidot, Forden's loyal subordinate, and Glodel, a fierce warrior serving Louis. Given their goal was to draw Louis' attention, the group decided to intervene on Glodel's behalf, hoping to defeat Jidot and aid their cause. However, Glodel proved ungrateful, responding with arrogance that left a sour taste. But before they could address the situation further, a new arrival caused a stir. Louis's skyrunner Caradrius descended from the skies, flanked by two members of the Parapus tribe. To their shock, Juna, the kingdom's beloved songstress, was revealed to be aligned with Louis, her true allegiance hidden all along. Seeking to improve their standing with Louis, Will feigned a willingness to serve him. Louis, ever the master of authority and power, responded coldly, stating that if Will truly wished to follow him, he would need to demonstrate his strength in front of the entire nation. It was clear that Louis valued personal power and public displays of dominance above all else. After several days of travel, Will and his group finally arrived in Martyra, where they were greeted by Nardon, the town's captain. Nardon was pleased with their timely arrival, but his subordinate Morris couldn't help but mock their efforts. As a gesture of goodwill, Nardon invited them to try the local delicacy, roast sandworm larvae. To everyone's surprise, Hulkenberg displayed an impressive tolerance for the unusual dish. The following day, Nardon led the group to meet the town's lord, Joanna, a sanctoress. Although she was hesitant at first, Joanna agreed to lend her support to Will's bid for the throne, on the condition that they resolve the issue of the abductor, Haisme. The group spent the rest of the day gathering information from the townsfolk, but it seemed they had hit a dead end. Just as they were about to give up, an unexpected ally emerged. Morris, the very man who had mocked them earlier, provided a crucial piece of information. He revealed that during the special sandflash weather, the sandworm's nest would be dormant, allowing them to approach without risking an attack. The next sandflash would occur in 5 days, giving them a limited window to act. That night, as Will spent time in the Gauntlet Runner, he inadvertently resonated with a mysterious magical device within the vehicle. The resonance unlocked a hidden teleportation magic, granting the group the ability to teleport to any previously visited location. This newfound power would prove invaluable in their journey, saving precious time as they pressed forward with their mission. On the day the sandflash occurred, Will and his group arrived near the sandworm lair, only to be immediately ambushed by a massive sandworm. To their shock, they discovered that the creature was not a mere beast, but a human transformed into a sandworm. The group was swallowed whole, but fortunately, the creature lacked the ability to chew, allowing them to fight their way out from within its stomach. After narrowly surviving, they managed to escape through the rear end of the monster. As they caught their breath and processed the harrowing experience, it became clear to them. They had been deceived by Morris. There was something sinister behind the entire situation. Despite this revelation, the group decided to push forward. They had already come so far, and they couldn't turn back now. Deep within the lair, they stumbled upon a small hut. As they approached, the sandworm launched another surprise attack on Will, but this time, it was stopped by a member of the Ujif tribe, a creature resembling a bat. To their astonishment, it was Haizme. A battle ensued, but Haizme fought half-heartedly and quickly fled. When the group investigated Haizme's hut, they discovered clues that suggested he had once been part of the Shadow Guard, a covert unit within the kingdom. There was also evidence indicating that Haizme had once had a child, though the child was now dead. Using noise as a diversion, the group managed to lure Haizme out once again. After a second confrontation, they began to doubt whether Haizme was truly the abductor behind the recent disappearances. Haizme, for his part, seemed willing to cooperate and agreed to return with them for further questioning. That evening, after returning to the town, another child was reported missing. However, by this point, Haizme was securely bound to the Gauntlet Runner, making it clear that he could not possibly have been the culprit. The group decided to confront the town's lord, Barden, at his estate. But when Morris, his subordinate, acted suspiciously during the confrontation, it raised a red flag. Thanks to Haizme's heightened hearing, he detected the sound of a child crying within the house. Barden denied that Joanna, the Sanctoress, had any children, but the situation was becoming clearer by the moment. The group used a hidden well to infiltrate the Old Town Castle, where they discovered Morris in the process of transporting the kidnapped children. It was revealed that Morris had been kidnapping children for profit and framing Haizme for the crimes. He had even lured Will's group into the sandworm lair, intending to have them meet their end. Furious at the betrayal, Haizme awakened his archetype power.
Who prey on innocent lives, your sin will be repaid. Yet I cannot condemn you alone. Not when I could not see past my own suffering. Not when I locked myself away to be alone with my pain.
O lodestar, who falters in memory, O thou anguished traveler. Thy long stagnant stance hath finally been broken. Now choose thy path.
Choose? My choice is already made. You can't erase your past. All you can do is take it in hand and reshape your future.
Thank you. Thou hast chosen a noble parting. Henceforth, thy fears and insecurities are thy light. O lodestar, whose light reveals the king's own path, awaken.
Haisme Noctul. I believe the arc of life depends not upon birth. By these hands soiled or sinless, I fight!
Realizing the gravity of the situation, Morris fled deeper into the castle. The chase led them to a disturbing revelation. Morris had summoned a gigantic, man-eating monster. It was then that they learned the grim fate of the kidnapped children. Each had been sent to feed the creature. The group carefully avoided the monster's gaze as they ventured further through the castle, eventually reaching the chamber where they confronted both Morris and Joanna. However, they were caught in a trap and captured, finding themselves locked in dungeon cells. When they regained consciousness, they discovered they were caged, and in the adjacent cell was none other than Captain Klinger, who had previously escaped. He, too, had fallen victim to the monster and was destined to become its next meal. With the help of Gallica, the group managed to escape their cells, rescuing their comrades and meeting Joanna in a nearby chamber. It was in that chamber that the truth finally came to light. The monstrous creature was not a beast, but a human child who had been transformed into a grotesque form. The tragedy was revealed. Joanna had once had a child, but because the child's father was of a different race, their mixed-blood child was seen as an omen of misfortune by the townspeople. A hired nurse had cruelly killed the child, and Joanna's father had been driven out by the very same people. This tragedy had sent Joanna's mental state into a downward spiral, and she had come to view the transformed child as a replacement for her lost son. She had raised it in secret, using it as a means to exact revenge on the townspeople by feeding them to the creature. After ordering the creature to devour Morris, who had outlived his usefulness, Joanna turned the monster on Will and his group. A fierce battle ensued, but with guidance from Haisme, who had also lost a child, Joanna was able to confront her own emotional turmoil. Realizing the depth of her sins, she vowed to atone by participating in the exhibition of the brave and publicly revealing the truth about what had transpired. With the mystery of the child abductions finally resolved, Haisme officially joined Will's team, his quest for redemption now intertwined with their own. The group arrived in Port Brilehaven aboard the Gauntlet Runner, preparing for the exhibition of the brave. At the event, participants showcased the heads of monsters they had slain, with Forden's impressive capture of a giant squid garnering the most attention. When it was Will's turn to present, Joanna arrived on schedule, accompanied by Barden. As a sanctoress, she publicly confessed to her crimes before the entire audience. This bold move caused High Archbishop Forden to fly into a rage. Without hesitation, he commanded the monk army to execute Joanna on the spot. Meanwhile, Will and his team's performance at the exhibition earned them considerable popularity among the citizens. By exposing the corruption within Sanctism and bringing shame to Forden, Will's group caught the attention of Louis, who reassessed them more favorably. He requested that they remain in the city for further instructions. Two brothers from Louis's faction, Fidelio and Basilio, were sent to meet with them. After passing their trials, the group was escorted to Louis's Skyrunner Caradrius. Seizing the opportunity, Gallica discreetly searched the airship for any design blueprints. She not only found Louis's room, but also unexpectedly crossed paths with Juna, who was also on a similar mission. Eventually, Louis agreed to let Will and his group join his faction, mentioning that a grand banquet would be held in about a month. During this event, Will and Gallica would infiltrate the Skyrunner Caradrius to steal the magical blueprints. However, things went awry during the execution of the plan. Enhanced security systems prevented Will from entering Louis's room. Then, Glodell, a longtime adversary, noticed that Will was missing from the banquet and began searching for him. In an unexpected turn, the Skyrunner Caradrius took off. Will, using his sword surfer technique, ventured along the outer wall of the airship and managed to infiltrate Louis's room through the exterior door. After a thorough search, he finally found the magic design blueprints, but just then, Juna walked in. Initially, Juna and Will exchanged words. However, upon hearing Gallica's name, Juna's expression changed drastically. She urged them to take the blueprints and leave quickly. Unfortunately, Glodel, who had been on a search of his own, discovered their tracks and was about to report them to Louis. Meanwhile, during the banquet, Louis mentioned the possibility of a spy among his ranks, which made Stroll and the others anxious. At this point, Juna had been captured, and the vile Glodel threatened her life to force Will and the others into submission. His actions enraged Juna, who cleverly manipulated him into agreeing to a duel. As the royal magic's protection faded, Juna awakened her archetype power.
Very well, O lodestar who wanders in sorrow, O thou anguished traveler who hath borne the weight of parting from the start. Henceforth, thy fears and insecurities become thy light. Thou art the brilliant star that shall illuminate the king's road. Now, awaken.
Look at me! What you see now is my commitment to my song! Behold, my voice rises from the depths of my heart!
And with Will's help, they defeated Glodel. Pretending to surrender, Glodel tried to launch a sneak attack when Will wasn't looking. However, he was swiftly punished by royal magic, ending his life instantly. Fidelio and Basilio arrived just in time to investigate the situation. Will and Juna quickly decided to pin the blame for the spy activities on Glodel, as the dead could not defend themselves. Their deception went unnoticed, and the group escaped suspicion. Afterward, Juna met up with the team on the Gauntlet Runner. It was revealed that, like Grius, Juna was an undercover spy sent by the Prince's faction to infiltrate Louis' ranks. Her mission was to steal the magical blueprints. With this goal now accomplished, the next step was to find someone knowledgeable in magic to decode the blueprints. Juna immediately thought of her sister, Sanctoress Rella. Using teleportation magic, the group returned to the royal capital, where Juna led them to find Rella. Upon learning that Juna had not been truly in love with Louis, Rella, though somewhat relieved, still faced the difficult task ahead. After reviewing the blueprints, Rella regretfully informed them that the design was incomplete. It only contained fragments of key points, making it impossible for her to derive a solution. The group was back at square one, knowing that the only way to save the prince was to confront Louis. With their options dwindling, the mood grew heavy as they realized the daunting challenge that lay ahead. Soon after the banquet, the announcer's voice rang out, declaring the results of the first stage of the competition. The top 20 contestants would advance to the next round, and by sheer fortune, Will was among them. But the second contest, it was no mere test of strength. It was a challenge with a darker twist. The participants were tasked with seizing sacred relics from so-called heathens, those who dared to defy the teachings of Sanctism, and bringing them to be sealed by the Sanctism authorities. It was clear Forden had an ulterior motive. This was his chance to tighten his grip on power, to spread the influence of Sanctism even further, and to feed his own ambitions. In response to this, Louis had a mission for Will and his team: retrieve a divine relic known as Dracodios from Virga Island. This island, home to the Mastari tribe, had long resisted the reach of Sanctism. It was the only place in the kingdom that had never bowed to its influence. The Mastari people, marked by the third eye on their foreheads, possessed the rare ability to see the flow of Magla, a force that few could comprehend. The group decided to take to the seas, using Nuriz's modifications to the Gauntlet Runner, which were now equipped to traverse the waters. But fate had other plans. Louis sent the Fidelio brothers along on their journey, ostensibly to keep Juna safe, but everyone knew it was a thinly veiled attempt to keep them under surveillance. As they sailed across the ocean, disaster struck. The Gauntlet Runner was attacked by a colossal humanoid creature. Fidelio, ever the protector, was injured while shielding Juna, but Will, quick on his feet, managed to save him just in time. The team fought back fiercely, and with the help of the Fidelio brothers, they managed to slay the monster. To avoid drawing attention, they opted for a quiet landing at the secluded rear of Virga Island. But Virga Island was not the peaceful retreat they had imagined. As they explored, they stumbled upon a young, blonde-haired girl bathing, and before they could even blink, soldiers from the Mustari tribe swarmed in, capturing Will and his group. The Fidelio brothers managed to slip away, but the rest were taken prisoner, thrown into the island's dark and grim prison. And then, something utterly unexpected happened. The announcer of the competition, the one who represented Sanctism, none other than Bartlin, was also on the island, observing the contestants. By sheer chance, he found himself imprisoned too. At the time, Virga Island was in turmoil. Livestock were dying, monsters roamed the land, and crops withered to dust. The islanders, steeped in their ancient beliefs, saw these disasters as the wrath of the dragon god, a punishment for their fallen faith. In the past, whenever such calamities struck, the Mustari would offer human sacrifices to appease the dragon. But this time, the island's leader, Eden, stood in defiance of such bloodshed. His younger sister, the island's priestess Yufa, volunteered to become the sacrificial offering herself, hoping to save the island from further ruin. The sacrificial ritual was set to take place in the temple where the Dracodios was kept. With the help of the Fidelio brothers, Will's group, and even Bartlin, managed to break free from their prison. They rushed toward the temple, but fate was not finished with them yet. Along the way, they found Eden, gravely injured and barely clinging to life. Eden told them that something had gone horribly wrong in the temple. The Magla had become violent, guards were slaughtered, and Yufa had vanished in the chaos. He had barely escaped, using his last ounce of strength. Eden, desperate to save his sister, begged Will and his team to rescue Yufa. But Fidelio, weakened by old wounds, could go no further. He and his brother Basilio stayed behind, leaving Will's group to continue the journey alone, toward the temple and its unknown dangers. As they infiltrated the temple, Will and his comrades found themselves in a labyrinth of corridors. Every wrong turn led them back to the beginning, but they pressed on, determined. Finally, they discovered Yufa, preparing for the sacrifice. She was willing to die for her people, to end the suffering, but Will's group convinced her that the so-called wrath of the dragon god was not divine punishment. It was a lie. Skeptical but moved by their words, Yufa agreed to follow them. The group descended deeper into the temple, uncovering ancient murals on the walls, depicting the gods worshipped by the island's ancestors and key events from their past. They learned that the Dracodios had an origin that stretched far beyond their understanding. The deeper they went, the more shocking the truth became. The lower levels of the temple were not what they expected. The place, once known as Lost Dracongrace Shinjuku, was not just an ancient temple. It was the ruined capital of a forgotten civilization. And as the group ventured further, they began to uncover things that defied logic. Ancient scientific equipment lined the walls. Broken experimental tables lay scattered across the floor, and strange symbols adorned the documents. This place looked more like a research lab than a sacred temple. Could it be? Was the temple hiding something even more profound? Just as they pieced together this mystery, a deep rumbling shook the ground beneath them. The Dracodios had awoken. As they reached the altar, they were confronted with a monstrous vision, what seemed to be the dragon god of legend. But as they drew closer, they realized the truth. This so-called dragon was not a divine being, but a human. Its body fused with the creature, a human responsible for the disturbances in Magla, and the true cause of the island's recent calamities. Yufa, heartbroken but resolute, understood at last. The wrath of the dragon god had been a myth, a misunderstanding. To save her people, she took the Dracodios from the altar, and with her archetype power awakening,
O Lodestar, you torn maiden of faith, O thou anguished traveler. Thy long stagnant stance hath finally been broken. Now choose thy path.
I love that island. I love the smell of its verdant flora. But what I love more than anything is its people. Their words may be coarse, but their hearts are true. I must save them. Please!
Thank you. Thou hast chosen a noble parting. Henceforth, thy fears and insecurities become thy light. O Lodestar, whose light reveals the king's own path, awaken!
If I cannot save them in death, then I swear I'll protect them with my life! All of you, let me fight by your side!
She and the group battled the out-of-control beast. Together, they fought for the future of the island and its people, realizing that sometimes the greatest monsters are not the ones we see, but the ones we believe in. After the battle ended, the body of the dragon began to dissipate, unraveling in a stunning display of energy. What was once a fearsome creature dissolved into pure, concentrated energy that flowed into the sacred relic, Dracodios. The artifact, now glowing with renewed brilliance, seemed to pulse with a power of its own. But here's the twist. The so-called sacred relic was not a mythical object, nor was the dragon a real creature. What had appeared to be a mighty beast was, in fact, a tangible form crafted from the energy of Magla itself. The dragon, a mere manifestation, was a vessel for this immense power. As the group stood in awe, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The tradition of the priestess sacrifice on Virga Island wasn't what it had seemed. The priestess wielded the Dracodios, infused with the power of the dragon, in an act of bravery, not blind self-sacrifice. For years, the islanders had misunderstood the legend, thinking the priestess had to give up her life to stop the disaster. But now, Yufa understood the truth. True courage didn't lie in dying for a cause, but in confronting the source of the threat head-on and resolving it. Though the immediate crisis in the temple had been resolved, the enemy was not yet defeated. As they exited the temple, the foe managed to escape back to the village. Will's group quickly regrouped and returned to Virga Island, ready to face the monster one final time. This time, the villagers who watched the battle unfold began to realize the truth behind the dragon god legend, and their misunderstanding was cleared up once and for all. The tension on Virga Island had come to a satisfying conclusion. But just as they began to celebrate their victory, they remembered the task that Louis had set for them, to bring back the Dracodios. The people of Virga Island were reluctant to part with such a sacred artifact, passed down through generations. Yet Yufa, having gained new understanding of the world and her own courage, made a bold decision. She chose to leave her island behind and travel with Will's group, using the opportunity to see the world beyond the shores of Virga Island. In doing so, she became their newest companion. However, there was something far more significant that Yufa discovered during this adventure. She learned that the Dracodios was not just a relic, it had the ability to bypass the protection of royal magic and directly attack the Chosen One. This revelation shed light on Louis' true intentions. He had likely sought the Dracodios not for its divine power, for its potential as a weapon. After some tense discussion, Will's group decided that handing the Dracodios directly over to Louis was out of the question. Instead, they asked Nuras to craft a replica, an imitation that would satisfy Louis and keep him at bay. The real Dracodios would remain in their hands, a secret weapon they could use when the time came to deal with Louis once and for all. Meanwhile, Fidelio's injuries had not fully healed, and Juna, ever the caring sister, called upon Rella, her sister, to treat him. Despite Fidelio's cold and aloof demeanor, there was a surprising revelation. When the human attackers had come, Fidelio had stepped up, helping to evacuate the villagers with an unexpected kindness. What was even more surprising was that Fidelio seemed to have a vague understanding of Will's group's true intentions. Yet, despite knowing this, he didn't seem eager to report them to Louis. all the signs pointed to something deeper. Although the Fidelio brothers were loyal to Louis, they were not blindly so. They still clung to a sliver of conscience. Perhaps, just perhaps, they were not entirely the enemies Will's group had believed them to be. After completing all the tasks on Virga Island, Will's group boarded the Gauntlet Runner and set course for their next destination, the Altaberry Height, where they would prepare for the upcoming Sanctism Festival. Upon arriving, they proceeded to Louis's airborne war chariot, where they successfully delivered the replica of the Dracodios. Louis seemed completely unaware of the switch and accepted the counterfeit without suspicion, as if nothing was amiss. The Sanctism Festival was set to take place over 2 days in the majestic opera house of Altaberry Height. The first day would feature the pre-festival vigil, during which Juna would perform, showcasing her singing talent. The second day would host the official Sanctism ceremony, where the Sanctism would seal the divine relics collected by the participants, cementing the power and authority of the faith. It was a pivotal moment not only for the competition, but also for the display of power and belief. Meanwhile, Will's group had already devised a covert plan to act during the event. At the inn, Stroll carefully outlined the operation. Their intel confirmed that Louis would attend Juna's performance during the vigil. The plan was bold, risky, and relied on precise timing. Heisme would create a distraction by drawing the guards' attention, with Virga leading them away from their post. Meanwhile, Will and Yufa would infiltrate the opera house's ceiling at a moment of weak defense. Their goal, to use the Grand Chandelier as a platform for a long-range sniper attack with the Dracodios, aimed directly at Louis in the VIP section. Once the attack was carried out, Yufa would retrieve the spear using his powers, while Stroll and Hulkenberg ensured a clear escape route. It was a high-stakes mission, and with time running out, they needed to act quickly before the Dracodios could be discovered. When the day of the operation arrived, everything unfolded as planned. Will and Yufa successfully infiltrated the ceiling, neutralized the few guards stationed there, and, during the height of Juna's performance, Will launched the Dracodios at Louis from above.
We got him! Right?
The spear struck its target with deadly precision, but something went wrong. Yufa, unable to retrieve the weapon as planned, watched helplessly as the situation quickly deteriorated. Realizing the mission was compromised, Will's group made their way to the rooftop, attempting to change their tactics. But in a shocking turn of events, Louis appeared before them, holding the Dracodios in hand. It was clear that the earlier attack had not been fatal. Faced with the complete exposure of their plan, Will stepped forward and issued a direct challenge to Louis. Without the protection of royal magic, the two engaged in a brutal duel. Despite his injuries, Louis displayed exceptional combat prowess, managing to hold his ground against multiple opponents and suppressing Will's group. In the critical moment, Yufa noticed the Dracodios lying on the ground. Acting quickly, they coordinated a series of moves that ultimately led to Louis's defeat. As the Dracodios struck Louis's body, a loud crack echoed through the opera house as the chandelier shattered, sending glass raining down. Louis lost his balance and plummeted from the VIP section, crashing onto the stage below. The audience gasped in shock, and Juna's singing halted abruptly. Chaos erupted in the opera house. In a quick-thinking move, Stroll seized the moment and jumped onto the stage, delivering an impassioned speech to the crowd. He claimed that Will's group had been pretending to serve Louis to gain his trust, only to turn on him when the opportunity arose and eliminate the traitor. Stroll's smooth words and persuasive tactics bought them enough time to stabilize the situation. The person most pleased by this turn of events was, of course, Forden. Upon confirming Louis's death, he swiftly took possession of the Dracodios and praised Will's group for their loyalty, especially commending Hulkenberg for his role in the attempted assassination of the prince years ago. As the group exited the opera house, they were intercepted by Fidelio and Basilio, eager to hear the truth. After listening to Will's explanation, the brothers did not react with hostility. Instead, they left silently, their expressions clouded with uncertainty. Will's group couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, especially since they knew the true culprit was still at large. Later, when Will took out the Farsight mirror to check on the cursed prince, he discovered that the curse had not been lifted. This revelation struck them hard. It meant that their original assumption, Louis was the one who had cursed the prince, had been wrong. The situation was far more complex than they had realized. The group immediately returned to the inn to discuss their next move. In the midst of the hurried discussions, Hulkenberg suddenly recalled a crucial detail. During the chaos in the opera house, Forden had specifically mentioned that Hulkenberg had once wounded the attacker in the back. However, Hulkenberg had never shared this information with anyone before. This implied that only the true culprit could have known such a specific detail. The realization hit Will's group like a thunderclap. Forden and the Sanctism forces he led were most likely the true masterminds behind the prince's curse. This discovery explained much about the events leading up to this point. Louis's frantic search for magic blueprints wasn't a sign of guilt, but rather an attempt to uncover the truth of the curse and clear his name. Far from being the villain, Louis seemed to be a misunderstood investigator, trying to prove his innocence in the face of overwhelming odds. Forden, on the other hand, had used the power of Sanctism to conceal the real conspiracy and manipulate events to his advantage. With the truth now clearer, Will's group realized they had been playing into Forden's hands all along. The direction of the story had shifted dramatically, and they would need to regroup, uncover the final pieces of the puzzle, and confront the true mastermind behind the prince's curse before it was too late. That night, Juna sought out her sister Rella, hoping to learn more about Forden and his true intentions. However, Rella remained tight-lipped, revealing nothing about the enigmatic leader. The next day, the formal Sanctism ceremony proceeded as planned. At the center of the stage stood Forden, holding the Dracodios spear, delivering an impassioned speech in which he declared his intention to halt the competition and announce the winner immediately. His authoritarian stance sparked outrage among the other participants, and the atmosphere in the opera house grew tense with dissatisfaction and confusion. With little time to spare, Will's group rushed to the stage to confront Forden, accusing him of being the mastermind behind the cursed prince and the entire conspiracy. But the audience and participants scoffed at the accusation, many mocking the group's claims. Just as the tension reached a boiling point, a surprising figure emerged. A man in a white robe slowly walked from the edge of the stage, drawing gasps of disbelief from the crowd. It was none other than the supposedly dead Louis. Seeing Louis alive, Forden was visibly shaken. Without hesitation, he raised the Dracodios spear, preparing to strike him down. But just as the spear was about to reach its mark, the king's magic activated, binding Forden's hands and feet in midair, rendering him completely immobile. The audience watched in stunned silence as the truth slowly began to unfold. It was revealed that the spear in Forden's hands was a counterfeit. A faint smile crossed Louis's face as he drew the real Dracodios spear from his cloak. With incredible speed, he leaped forward and impaled Forden through the chest, ending his life in an instant. The opera house erupted into chaos, with people fleeing in all directions and screams filling the air. Will's group stood frozen on stage, utterly bewildered and unsure whom to trust. Unfazed by the pandemonium, Louis calmly put away the spear and surveyed the scene with a knowing smile. He then began to explain the intricate and devious conspiracy that had been unfolding behind the scenes. The revelations came fast and hard. Louis revealed that the necromancer, Zorba, who had been defeated in the cathedral earlier, had not died as everyone believed. Instead, he had survived the fall and rejoined Louis in secret. Zorba had infiltrated Forden's sanctism as an undercover agent. This meant that from the very beginning of the group's mission, Louis had been aware of their true goal, though he had remained silent, allowing the group's plan to unfold in order to gain crucial information. As Louis continued his explanation, he revealed that on the night in the opera house, when the group thought they had successfully struck him with the Dracodios, the spear had indeed pierced his body, but it had missed a fatal spot. When Forden had sent people to confirm Louis' death, it was Zorba who went in his place, lying about Louis' death to bolster Forden's confidence. During this time, Zorba had secretly swapped the real Dracodios with the counterfeit, ensuring Louis Shuish could reclaim the key weapon. Using his powerful magic, Louis had healed his wounds overnight and was now ready to expose Forden's deception at the Sanctism ceremony. But that was not the end of the story. Through the group's actions, Louis had learned something even more crucial. The prince was still alive. Louis' expression darkened as he prepared to assert his authority. He raised the Dracodios spear once again, aiming it at the unsuspecting Sanctism followers, preparing to demonstrate his absolute power. In that tense moment, Fidelio and Basilio stepped forward without hesitation, placing themselves between Louis and the followers. Seeing his once loyal subordinate standing in his way, Louis was enraged and intensified his magic. He vowed to crush any obstacle in his path. As he prepared to unleash the full force of his power,
I see. So even you two faltered.
Fidelio!
Hey! Wake up!
I get it now. Only fair thing in this world is power. With it, you can take whatever you want in this life. Or so I thought.
Tell.
But you know, if all the weak get left behind, who's left to protect them? I've been an idiot. Sorry about that.
Stop talking, Del.
Fidelio shoved Basilio aside and took the full brunt of the blow himself. The light beam from Louis' spear pierced Fidelio's chest and he collapsed lifeless to the ground. Devastated, Basilio fell to his knees beside his brother's body, overwhelmed with grief and shock. As he knelt there, his body jerked unnaturally, and he collapsed to the floor, his consciousness fading. In the blur of his thoughts, he seemed to enter a dreamlike state. He saw Fidelio, smiling gently at him as if entrusting him with something. Basilio wept, clutching his brother's hand, and as the dream faded, a surge of strength flooded through him. His soul awakened, and the power hidden within him was fully unleashed.
Traveler, thy long stagnant stance hath finally been broken. Now choose thy path.
Not really a choice. It's back to the starting line. This time I'll lead. Ardell entrusted me with this chance. I've got to show him I've got this.
Thank you. Thou hast chosen a noble parting. O Lodestar, whose light reveals the king's own path, henceforth thy fears and insecurities are thy light. Awaken!
See you around, Del.
Rising from the ground, Basilio vowed to fulfill his brother's unfulfilled wishes, to fight for the weak and protect those who could not protect themselves. His sword gleamed with newfound light as he stood tall and faced whatever challenges the future held for him and the group. The path ahead was uncertain, but with Basilio's newfound strength, they would confront the darkness that loomed over them, together. Meanwhile, deep within the United Kingdom of Euchronia, an emergency meeting convenes in a race against time. The sudden death of Forden leaves the kingdom in chaos. Desperate for stability, the council turns to Saintess Rella, appointing her as the new leader. Her wisdom and prestige make her the perfect candidate to calm the unrest. However, this decision ignites fury in Jadot, who had long believed he would inherit power as the next high priest of sanctism. His dreams, now shattered, crumble before his eyes. As the political intrigue unfolds, our protagonist and their team craft a bold plan. To protect the true prince's identity, the protagonist steps into a daring role, pretending to be the prince himself. With Hulkenberg's revelation that the royal bloodline carries Elda ancestry, the group seizes this opportunity to garner public support and challenge the powerful Louis. The next day, in the heart of the capital, Saintess Rella steps onto the grand stage to announce her candidacy for the throne, shocking the gathered crowd. But the surprise doesn't end there. Louis emerges, wielding the almighty Dracodios spear, and demands the abolishment of the king's magic, a safeguard that has balanced the tournament's rules. Under immense pressure, the old king relents.
Thou wouldst rule by strength alone.
He's talking!
Like when he first rose.
I killed Forden, yet has my standing fallen at all? Surely you would know. This petty race limps forward, while the land is further flooded with anxiety and monsters. You have left us an age of strife. You are powerless to stop it. And in your place, fool king, I will restore the balance and right this land's wrongs.
So be it. They who remain seeketh a clash without hindrance. Very well. Now and hereafter, my magic shall no longer protect thee. Face this as a trial renewed. If ye would be a true king, then I bid thee prevail.
Chaos ensues as the competition descends into unrestrained violence. Amid this uproar, the protagonist steps forward, boldly declaring themselves the prince. The announcement stirs both disbelief and intrigue, sending ripples through the crowd. Louis, dismissive and arrogant, walks away with disdain, his confidence unshaken. But the seeds of doubt are planted, and the tides begin to shift. As tensions reach a boiling point, Jadot openly challenges Rella in an attempt to seize control. To everyone's astonishment, Rella sheds her serene image, unleashing a devastating spell of violet-red thorns, instantly overpowering Jadot. The group is stunned. These cursed thorns bear an uncanny resemblance to the magic that has tormented the prince for years. Rella, cold and unapologetic, reveals a shocking truth. She was the one who cursed the prince, manipulating events to frame Louis and secure her place in the shadows of power. Even Hulkenberg, who had sworn vengeance, is left speechless by this revelation. But Rella isn't done. She casts a spell of mass mind control, binding the consciousness of her followers to her own. The crowd becomes a sea of blank stares, their free will erased. Reveling in her newfound dominance, Rella declares her intention to reshape Sanctism to her will. Juna, devastated by her sister's actions, confronts her, but Rella offers only a cryptic smile, promising answers at the Magic Academy. With the kingdom unraveling, the group barely escapes Jadot's pursuing monk army aboard their modified flying gauntlet runner, heading north into the frozen wilderness. In the snowy expanse of the abandoned Royal Magic Academy, the group finally faces Rella. She summons the mighty dragon god Sogni, a fearsome guardian. After a grueling battle, the group emerges victorious. Defeated, Rella unveils her motives. Her actions, driven by years of coercion and fear for Juna's safety, were orchestrated by Forden. But her revelations go further. Louis is no ordinary rival. Beneath his quest for power lies an obsession so consuming, it threatens to engulf the world in darkness. Rella, now convinced of the group's strength and Juna's resilience, places her hopes in them. With the weight of her burdens lifted, Rella entrusts the fate of the kingdom to the team, setting the stage for the battles to come. After casting the consciousness synchronization magic, Rella reached out through telepathy, unveiling Forden's dark deeds to every sanctist in the room. With a voice full of urgency, she urged them to rally behind Will as the next king. But before the world could see the fruits of her revelation, Rella shared one final heartfelt moment with her sister, Juna. In that quiet exchange, Rella expressed her wishes for Juna's future before she cast a spell of ice and ended her own life.
What's left of my life is a price already claimed by my own curse. Perhaps it was too cruel to ask for a quicker death at your hands. I leave Juna and this country in your hands. Thank you, Juna. Your life and will was always your own. If only I could have lived with your freedom. I admire you. Please don't let this change you, dear sister. I just wish I'd had more time to watch over you.
The cursed thorns around her slowly faded, and though Rella's death was heartbreaking, it marked the arrival of a critical turning point in the story. In that moment of tragedy, hope flickered. The prince, who had been trapped in a coma for so long, stirred and opened his eyes at last. But even with this moment of light, the battle for the throne was far from over. The path ahead remained complicated, and Will's most formidable opponent remained Louis. The tension reached its peak when Louis, in a move to seize absolute control, announced a showdown before the cathedral on September 24th. For Will and his group, it was clear what needed to be done. They had to prepare for the coming battle and strengthen their abilities, for the decisive day was approaching. As the atmosphere across the kingdom grew thick with anticipation, two factions formed, each waiting for the clash that would determine the kingdom's future. Finally, the day arrived. Will's group boarded the modified gauntlet runner and made their way back to the capital. The streets were teeming with divided crowds, and the air crackled with the sense of impending chaos. At the cathedral, Will and Louis met in a fierce life-or-death battle. Despite the grueling fight, Will's group emerged victorious. Yet, Louis had clearly prepared for this moment, and as he lay dying, he revealed a shocking secret. The Elda tribe, known for their peaceful ways, was capable of transforming into humans and wreaking havoc around the world. Before he could explain further, Louis summoned one final spell.
What's happening?
What is him?
Witness the truth! Good people, you would know the identity of your would-be prince. Here he is!
It's a monster! It's a human!
It's coming.
The truth of the humans is laid bare. They're no beasts, but another form of the Elder Tribe. Cast aside their guise with magic, and they reveal their true colors. He is no royalty, no boy, but a ruthless fiend intent on your throne!
It's not true! It has to be one of the Count's illusions!
What illusion? That's no prince! It's a monster! It'll kill us all! Run!
What has become of him?
It must be Louis's wicked magic. Yet, the Order of Magla, it's exactly like a human's.
He's not!
He's a human.
Hey! Snap out of it! You have to stop this!
A burst of magic that altered Will's very form. The shockwave from the spell transformed Will into a towering monster. His body twisted, and though Yufa desperately tried to reverse the transformation, the magic overwhelmed him. The crowd, seeing Will's monstrous form, was struck with fear and panic. They saw him as a demon, a force of destruction, and his support quickly turned to suspicion and fear. Will, now seen as a threat, was forced to flee, and the group scattered in all directions, seeking refuge in Will's homeland, the ancient Eldan Sanctum. When they arrived at the Sanctum, they found a land in ruin, its former beauty now little more than broken walls and memories. The Sanctists had long ago destroyed it, leaving only echoes of what once was. The group, exhausted and desperate for answers, encountered Russell, the prince's former tutor, who brought them heartbreaking news. The prince had been slain by a murderer who had entered the sanctum after the curse was lifted. It was here, deep within the sanctum, that they found the prince's body, lying cold and lifeless. Everything they had fought for seemed in vain. Just as despair began to swallow them, a figure emerged from the shadows, an ancient hermitess. With a voice as old as the earth itself, she revealed the truth. The prince was not just any royal. He was the son of King Hythlodaeus V and the queen of the Elda tribe, and this revelation explained the prince's unique bloodline. But tragedy struck when the king died shortly after the prince's birth. The queen, in her attempt to protect her son, was slain while guiding him to safety, and the Sanctists had begun their campaign to destroy the sanctum soon after. But before they could fully process this revelation, Will suddenly felt a sharp pain in his head. It was as though something was pulling at his very soul. And then, the mysterious woman who had been guiding him all along appeared once more. Her voice was soft, but firm, leading him to relive the journey he had taken and the choices he had made. In this moment, the player faced a decision. If the wrong choice was made, Will would fall deeper into despair, and the game would end in tragedy. Fantasy is dead. But if the right path was followed, the truth would slowly begin to unravel. The truth, as it turned out, was far greater than anyone could have imagined.
Hark, life is not yet lost. Thou wert born apart from the prince's flesh, born of his desire to change the world. In his stead didst thou travel the world. Thou didst support his heart and became his living fantasy. That is thy true self. Thou art everything the prince sought to be, his ideal. It all began with the novel in thy possession. Drawn by the divine relic, Magla coalesced into flesh, and flesh coalesced into form. The form of an elder, as I once was.
Will's memories, his very existence, had been a fabrication. A lie created by the prince, who, after being cursed, used the power of Magla to project his will into a new form, a body he created using the fantasy novel. Will, in essence, was the prince's fantasy, his ideal self brought into being through the prince's powerful desire to live the life he could not. In that moment, the two forms merged. Will and the prince became one. The prince, reborn in a new body, stood ready to face the world, not as a cursed soul, but as a king who could finally fulfill his destiny. The ancient hermitess began her tale, her voice heavy with the weight of forgotten truths. She unveiled a hidden history that had shaped the continent in ways few could fathom. Long ago, this land wasn't the diverse realm it is today. It was home to a singular civilization, one strikingly similar to the technological societies of our own world. But fate took a dramatic turn with the discovery of a mysterious phenomenon, Magla. This enigmatic force granted humanity the power to wield magic, a gift that seemed destined to surpass the limitations of technology. Yet, rather than bringing peace and prosperity, Magla became the spark of chaos, plunging the world into a devastating war. The destruction unleashed by Magla's unchecked power was catastrophic. Entire cities fell, and the once great civilization teetered on the brink of annihilation. In the aftermath, as the ruins of the old world smoldered, Magla began to transform the very fabric of life on the continent. Living beings, in their desperate bid to adapt and survive, began to mutate. Over generations, this led to the emergence of entirely new races, each shaped by the power of Magla, each forging its place in a new world order. But one race remained unchanged. The Elda tribe. They were the sole survivors of the old era, the unmutated descendants of ancient humanity. To the casual eye, the Elda appeared no different from ordinary humans, yet their unaltered lineage made them both a relic of the past and a target of prejudice. In this new world, they became symbols of what was lost, and of what some races saw as filth. Their very existence was a reminder of the old civilization's failures, and they were met with mistrust, discrimination, and hostility. The Hermita's voice darkened as she delved deeper. Magla, she explained, was no ordinary energy. It originated within the human heart itself, a manifestation of the deepest fears and anxieties that resided within. When emotions like fear and despair reached their peak, Magla would surge forth, escaping from the heart as raw energy. This energy, when harnessed, could be burned to create magic, granting its wielder incredible power. But this power came at a cost. Magla was not limitless. If someone failed to confront their fears, if they let their inner turmoil fester, Magla would build to a breaking point. Once it reached this critical mass, the energy would spiral out of control, transforming its host into a monstrous force of destruction. This was the horrifying truth behind Will's transformation during Louis's provocation. His fear, his anxiety, unresolved and unchecked, had allowed Magla to consume him, turning him into a monster before the eyes of the world. The Hermitess revealed an even more unsettling truth. All races shared a common origin. Despite their differences, they were all tied to humanity's essence. And because of this shared lineage, none were immune to Magla's corrupting influence. All could succumb to its chaos, becoming monsters if they let their fears overwhelm them. Turning her gaze to the events surrounding Louis, the Hermitess speculated about his motives. She recounted the story of a prominent medical family from ancient Eldon Sanctum, one that had dedicated itself to studying Magla's secrets. This family had perished during the Sanctum's destruction, their legacy wiped away. But the Hermitess noted a chilling coincidence. Louis bore the same surname as this lost family. If he was indeed a survivor, his actions were driven by more than ambition. They were fueled by hatred, a searing desire to exact revenge for the annihilation of his people. Such hatred could explain his willingness to bring the world to ruin. As the prince and his companions left the ruins of ancient Eldon Sanctum, they barely had time to process what they had learned before encountering an unexpected enemy. Zorba. This mysterious attacker's connection to the prince's journey was undeniable. The confrontation was fierce, but the prince, bolstered by a newfound resolve, overpowered Zorba with ease. In the aftermath of the battle, the prince reached a sobering realization. The threat posed by Louis was far greater than they had anticipated. If the world was to survive, if balance was to be restored, the prince would need to summon every ounce of his courage, strength, and determination to stop Louis, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, high above the kingdom, Louis had already made his move. Piloting the Skyrunner Caradrius, he ascended to the palace atop the legendary Giant's Face, a place shrouded in myth and mystery. There, amidst the ancient ruins of kings, he encountered the spirit of King Hythlodaeus Faf, the long-deceased ruler of the United Kingdom of Euchronia. In a moment that redefined the stakes, Louis cast off his carefully constructed facade, revealing his true identity. He was a member of the Elda tribe. Back in the kingdom below, Will and his companions were not idle. With determination burning in their hearts, they raced back to the royal capital of Grand Trade. The city, once fractured by fear, was beginning to stir with hope. Thanks to the charismatic efforts of the town crier, Bartline, Will's group slowly rebuilt the trust they had lost. Their message spread across the streets, inspiring the people to believe in Will once more. Despite the shadow of Louis' immense power looming overhead, Will no longer hesitated. He was resolute. This time, he would face Louis without doubt or fear, determined to end his twisted ambitions once, and the journey to the Giant's Face was perilous. Once a towering symbol of peace, it had become a nightmarish labyrinth of distorted corridors and hidden dangers. Yet Will and his companions pressed on, drawing strength from the faith of the people who stood behind them. They battled through countless foes, overcoming every trial in their path, and even defeating Zorba, whose resistance crumbled before their resolve. Finally, the team reached Louis. In the heart of the labyrinth, with the kingdom's fate hanging in the balance, Louis unveiled the truth behind his ultimate plan. He spoke of the royal scepter, the ancient artifact of power wielded by Euchronia's kings. The scepter's true purpose, Louis revealed, was not just a symbol of authority. It was a tool of unimaginable power. It could extract Megla, the energy of fear and anxiety, from the hearts of the kingdom's citizens. By absorbing this intangible force, the king could stabilize the kingdom, maintaining order and rationality across the realm. But, Louis explained, this system was faltering. As fears multiplied and anxieties deepened, Magla accumulated faster than the scepter could absorb it. The imbalance had catastrophic consequences. Magla spills had begun manifesting as monstrous outbursts across the kingdom, endangering lives and destabilizing society. Louis's voice grew colder as he outlined his vision. His plan was to reverse the flow of Magla, sending it surging back into the people from whom it was taken. This, he claimed, would be a crucible, an ultimate test of humanity's willpower. Only those strong enough to withstand the overwhelming flood of Magla, to retain their reason and humanity amidst the chaos, would emerge as the next stage of human evolution, the new humanity. This was the cornerstone of Louis's vision, a fair new world, where fear and weakness would no longer exist. Societal structures would be rebuilt from the ground up, and humanity would undergo a transformation so profound that it would transcend all past limitations. To Louis, this was the only path to a perfect society, a realm where the failings of the old world would never return. Before the battle began, Louis made a final, chilling offer to Will. He proposed an alliance, a chance to create this new world together. It was a choice with dire consequences. If players accepted Louis' offer, the story spiraled into a dark ending. Will and Louis, united in vision, would succeed in reshaping the world, but at an unspeakable cost. Fear and anxiety would become eternal, festered deliberately as a fuel for their new society. The old world would collapse entirely, replaced by a horrifying nightmare that could never awaken. But for those who chose to reject Louis, the path forward was no less harrowing. Enraged by Will's defiance, Louis unleashed a magical storm. The air crackled with raw energy as he summoned the full force of his powers, drawing upon the Tyrant Star, a celestial body long associated with destruction and rebirth. The time for words had passed. Will and his companions stood ready, their resolve unshaken, as the final confrontation began. On the precipice of ruin, the future of the kingdom would be decided by the clash between two irreconcilable visions. The battle for Euchronia's soul had reached its ultimate stage. As the storm brews over the Tyrant Star, players are granted one last opportunity to reflect, tying up unfinished tasks, bidding heartfelt farewells to beloved allies, and fortifying their resolve, Will and his team prepare to face their destiny. With the newly upgraded Gauntlet Runner, they plunge into the heart of the magical maelstrom, knowing full well that this is the point of no return. Their journey is fraught with peril. Along the way, they confront echoes of the past, former adversaries seeking vengeance. One by one, these foes fall, their strength feeding the growing resolve of Will and his allies. Legendary weapons are forged and bonds are tested. Finally, the team breaches the heart of the Tyrant Star, and there he stands. Louis, wielding the boundless power of Magla, a god in strength and wrath, yet Will and his companions remain steadfast. In a battle for the ages, Louis falters under their united might. But even in defeat, Louis refuses surrender. He flees aboard his flying Gauntlet Runner, summoning monstrous hordes to cover his escape. In a tragic and heroic moment, Will's allies make the ultimate sacrifice, holding the line against impossible odds. Their bravery gives Will and Gallica, with help from Nuras, the chance to storm Louis' war machine. Inside, the chaos reaches its peak. Louis, in his desperation, unleashes another devastating surge of Magla. And then, in a moment of unimaginable defiance, Will tears out his own heart, declaring to the universe that he would rather die than succumb to the darkness. When Will awakens, he finds himself not in the world he knows, but in one utterly alien. More, his enigmatic guide reveals the truth. Everything Will had experienced was a fabrication, a meticulously crafted illusion. The walls around them crumble, and Will is thrust into the bustling streets of modern-day Shinjuku. Confusion, shock, disbelief. This twist hits players like a thunderclap. At this pivotal moment, a choice is presented. To believe more and accept this reality is to end the journey with despair, to conclude that fantasy is but fiction. But rejecting more allows the adventure to continue, as Will embarks on a quest to uncover his true destiny. And then the final veil is lifted. More reveals his true identity, a younger reflection of the late King Hythlodaeus Fresht, the very architect of Will's fate. A being born of shattered ideals and a father's twisted love, More sought not only to protect Will, but to create a perfect world, written within the pages of a fantasy novel. But Will, unyielding, shatters this illusion. His resolve sets More free, breaking the chains of obsession. In a moment of poignant clarity, More returns Will to his reality. Will awakens to find his companions still by his side. The final confrontation begins. In the heart of the storm, Will faces Louis one last time.
Why? Why do you still stand in defiance? What drives such tenacity?
Louis, the world is full of injustice. Not everything you've said is wrong, much as it hurts to admit.
Yet, you would give up because you see no other way. and no future can come from that. We may struggle with fear and anxiety, but we shape our own destiny with our own hands. I have no doubts.
Yes, you're a man who has endured tragedy. It's foolish, I know, all this talk of belief. I know well. That said, if you cast aside all belief, all that remains is to endure a slow death.
As for me, I believe things can change. I have to. Singing and believing aren't so far apart, right? Even then, my songs touched you too. I know they did.
After I'd idealized my death more than I ever did my life, thanks to a chance encounter, everything changed for me. Now I can hope for the best, without fearing for the worst. The possibilities are endless. If you ask me, that's what magic is.
Louis, you got all these people who believe in you, because you gave them a shred of hope, and now you want to crush that hope. Maybe you're the one who's scared. Deep down, you're afraid to admit to yourself you're the one who's hopeless now.
Luis, the fairies came to live in the Sanctum. But do you know why we chose it? The Elder Tribe. We admired the people of humanity. To make our dreams into realities, we have to trust each other. When people do that, that's what makes them so amazing. If you deny the power of trust, if you make the world a place where it can't exist, then you're just plain wrong!
Fools. These false foundations. Who in their right mind could promise such fantasies? I will never let injustice be repeated. Never again!
His aura is entirely different. It's a magla burst. Luis is becoming a human.
Come on then! No choice now. We prove ourselves with all that we are!
Let's go then! This is our final battle!
Again!
Heated words clash like swords, and Louis succumbs to the darkness, transforming into the colossal archdemon Louis Caradrius. The battle is grueling. The stakes? Everything. Even when Louis falls, he rises again, his form even more monstrous. But Will, now fully empowered as the king of archetype,
Everyone's fighting their fear and anxiety. Nobody knows for sure what's right. And even through all that, the people have declared you king!
We fight for more than justice. Show him our will against his. Show him the fall of his world!
Hold fast to your ideals! 'Tis your sworn duty as king!
You wielded the power of kings! It's time to stop following in their footsteps! Now it's your turn to take your place with them!
Your fantasy is naught but lies!
What? What's going on?
Fantasy is more than an empty dream. It's a dream with the power to change the world!
Damn you!
In the aftermath, the sky's clear. Peace is restored. Will's mother, the Elder Queen, is revealed to have guided him all along, her spirit a light in the shadows. With Will's mission complete, the Queen and King find eternal rest, their burdens lifted.
All right, a warm welcome, please! His Majesty the new King! Your Majesty, you're so young!
Please. My king, your subjects would hear how you intend to lead them.
Relax, okay? Take it easy and use your own words.
As a ruler, I've much to learn. I cannot say what I'll accomplish. And yet, I believe the world can change by our hand. And to that end, I will face any odds.
Now, Your Majesty, a few more words. Naturally, some under your rule now supported other people in the race. How do you respond to their voices?
There will be times I let you down. I know that. Only results can prove my intent. But still, even should you oppose your king, you can always believe in your own future. I will make sure of it!
A nation where dreams and fantasies are always in reach will surely be a challenge.
We'll make it happen.
There you go. If you can pull that off, you'll be the finest king we've known. Well then, this is it! Your attention, please!
No lord remains for you to kneel before. Please take the crown with your own hands, my king.
As the kingdom rejoices, Will ascends to the throne as the new ruler of the United Kingdom of Euchronia. His trusted allies, the king's 6 partisans, take on roles of honor and leadership, ensuring the kingdom's prosperity. A year passes, and though much work remains, the kingdom flourishes. Ever the adventurer, Will and his companions set forth once more aboard their gauntlet runner, signaling the dawn of a new journey. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Until next time, fellow adventurers, stay brave and keep dreaming.
Well, I'm not certain we're in a position to talk, having followed straight after, saying we could just teleport back.
Well, hey, we figured the kids might want to change your scenery, like.
Wow! Amazing!
Poetic indeed. That the scepter's absence restored order to Magla, and even greenery to the sands.
I'll say, I definitely like this view better.
Let's go!
Look at that! The rubble's just bait for tourists now.
I never expected a view like this.
Let's see it all! Let's see the world!
Yeah.
A new journey now beckons. In days of eld, the people prospered and perished in turn. Struck by their ways, I wrote a book of my dearest ideas. A tale of fantasy. In my vision, they placed their trust, and so the kingdom breathed new life.
The strength to believe in the unknown, that can change everything. Without a doubt, you will face all sorts of trials ahead. But carry onward with all your heart. Onward, fearless, into a world unknown.